Years ago, my daughter-in-law wanted to be hypnotised by Bob, and at the last minute, she dropped out. So I decided to step in. And from that first session, I was taken back to a former life as a rounded soldier in the English Civil War.
Blimey, I said keep it brief, I didn't mean that brief.
Like a day at the office.
That's okay. No, that's good, that's good. That's the Radio Times heading to this whole thing.
Yeah.
You found out you were a roundhead in the Civil War, okay?
Yeah.
Bob, what was your, just lean in here, what was your role in all of this?
I was the hypnotist.
You were the hypnotist?
Yeah, I'm the hypnotist.
And you still are?
Yes, indeed, yes, I am awake.
But it was not this... I might not be the But you are doing this sort of a regression stuff. You're practising on the family, basically, aren't you?
Well, anyone that volunteers, providing they are the right subjects. You can't have everyone to do it. You know,
were you surprised at the time by what was coming out from your brother?
Well, you always have to take the information as it comes out with a little bit of pinch of salt at the time, because it could be information that they already knew in this life or learnt in this life. It could be fantasy, it could be something they've heard, read, learned about.
Seen a film.
You don't really know about this information until you start researching and sifting out the red herrings, as we call them.
Right.
When you're left with bits and pieces that you cannot give a present-day logical explanation for, then you have to start saying to yourself, this guy knows things that happened over 350 years ago that he shouldn't technically know about.
Right, now, these are things that you wouldn't know about either, because there's all sort of stuff coming out, right? You can't check on the day, can you?
We have to wait, and it's taken us 5 years to get to the place where we are now. And since we were on the show last time, with all the research we've done, and several magazine articles, including a couple of TV shows, Carl, who does most of the research for us, he has contacted a lady down in a village, because we were trying to find out if this guy actually existed.
Is this John Raphael?
John Raphael. We want to know if there ever was a real John Raphael, bearing in mind it's not an English surname, of course.
In Nottinghamshire?
In the 17th century. Was there ever a man with that name?
Right.
To that end, we started to search that point, along with all the other bits of information while we were doing it.
Carl, come on in. Good evening.
Carl,
welcome to Midlands Radio. Now, what's the latest? What I'm going to do now is we will go back to the original story, but a lot of people who know the original story want to know what's the latest stuff. What have you come up with, Carl?
Well, the latest information we have is we believe we've now found the family in the mid-1600s, mid-17th century. We believe now that they came from a village on the Somerset-Devon border called Colmstock. We asked Peter under hypnosis some questions about the particular area, but we didn't mention the name of the village, but Pete came up with the name of the village. He told us, or gave us information under hypnosis about the village, especially about the church, and we said, what is significant about the church? This is after I'd actually contacted a lady historian who lives in the village, and she said, if Peter knows about this village, he'll know something peculiar about the church. And Peter said, the only peculiar thing I can see about the church is that there's a yew tree growing out of the church tower.
Now, this is him saying this before he's seen...
Before he's been to the village.
Something like the photograph you've just given me,
That's
okay?
correct. But Peter said it is strange because the yew tree, although it grows out of the tower, it's growing out of the top of the tower.
Is that the thing on the right there?
That's it, still, and that was there over 350 years ago.
And just in case, this is for those who know, All Saints Church, Comstock?
Yes, correct.
Comstock in Devon, right. We've got a yew tree growing out of the tower. Now, what's amazing about...
something he could have made up. You know, he had to have known this, in that sense.
But whatever, it's still a very specific thing. It's very specific.
I also said, Gordon, that behind the church, I remember there used to be a blacksmith shop. So when we arrived there, we had a look around, and at the back of the church, there's a cottage there now, where the blacksmith used to be. And on the gate, it says the old forge. It used to be the blacksmith shop.
Yeah. And you've been able to check that out?
Oh yes, absolutely.
All that out.
Yeah,
right.
Just because a pub these days called Paddy O'Murphy's doesn't mean it's an Irish pub. You do know that, guys, don't you?
No, there used to be a blacksmith there.
That's right. Yeah. Now, what is interesting about this as well is that you are saying all this stuff and it's coming out now.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm wondering is if all this regression, because investigations always change the nature of what is being investigated, by the very fact that you are now interested and the chase is on, isn't it? The game's up, isn't it, right? And all that. Is this man here, Peter, are you now starting to play the part? Do you know what I'm saying? Is your imagination taking over?
Oh, absolutely not.
No way.
Well, even if he
No,
makes
no.
statements
No.
within his imagination, we are putting it down on paper, on record, on tape or whatever. We are then still researching it. So we throw it out if we find it doesn't connect.
What it seems to have done, it's like switching on the light. Peter comes out with information now when he hasn't been hypnotised.
Flashbacks.
Oh, yes, flashbacks all the time.
He'll ring me up out of the blue and tell me about something that he's...
Oh, but you look forward to those phone calls
Well,
at
yeah,
3 in the morning.
yeah.
Oh, lovely.
And we're researching some of that information.
Yes.
But going back to the village of Comstock, Peter said that for some reason he was in this village, and our latest information from the Mormon Church at Sutton Coldfield in Birmingham is that there's a whole family of Raphaels living in Comstock in this particular period. And names and dates match up to
The only known
information
family with that surname.
of anywhere in England.
Now, for those who are joining us halfway through this, we're going to go back because they could be saying, well, hang on, it's 3 guys who've got a bit of an obsession, now they're looking for stuff to back it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're going and finding the evidence and then bunging it into the original story.
that's true.
I don't think you care that much to convince other people, do you?
No, we'd like to put it to people who are genuinely interested.
But
have followed us.
How can I put this? What's in it for you?
Nothing financial at the moment, because it's cost us over 5 years an absolute fortune as 3 brothers to find this information.
We've travelled
But what
Scotland.
it is, it started off as a hobby, as a one-night session.
But let me put something else to you. It's ego and pride. If all of a sudden, at the end of the day, we found out that this had all been a dream, you know, Dallas, we all woke up in the shower, right? You'd look Pratt's, wouldn't you? So there's a pressure on you to get this right.
So with that,
The pressure is on for us to prove what Peter's saying, and up to now, he keeps being.
Well, what's in it for me is the satisfaction of knowing that information I come out with under hypnosis checks out.
It's not something he's learned in his life.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Do you know
We've
I'm going to say something?
challenged authority. We've challenged authority. Even the Time Team, a programme on Channel 4.
Yeah. Tony Robinson, love it.
We have challenged them, or put a challenge out to them, because Peter told us about a castle in Scotland that had lain virtually unknown for the last 200 years, hidden amongst bushes and trees. He told us where it was, took us directly to it. We've now found it, the ruins of it. We've challenged the Time Team because he said it was attacked. He knows the date it was attacked and who attacked it. There's no record that we've been able to find in the archives that says it was attacked.
Make a nice
But
Time Team special.
Time Team are going to find out if he's right.
Are they going to have a go?
They have got all the information up there now, and they're holding it for
Now that's interesting, because that means they're going to slightly move on from what they normally do. Is normally they go on physical evidence. This is a sort of ethereal evidence, isn't it? It's sort of psychic
If they can
evidence.
find tangible evidence to support his statement.
Well, last time you were in, and I just want to remind those of you who do know episode 1 of all of this, all right, last time you were in, you gave me a musket ball.
You did acquire a musket ball from us.
Yes, I did.
So
And I
this time, before you steal another musket ball, we'd like you to have this.
Oh, right. Well, blood on the crown. Oh, this is based on the... now, right, we're in print now. We're in print.
It's not the true story. This is an adventure story of this man, this character that Peter has come up with, based on the facts and figures that we've got.
Now, hang on a minute. Thank you for this. This is lovely, and I'm going to so enjoy reading this tonight. But help me with this. Isn't this going to slightly distract from what you're trying to prove? Because you've gone off into the world of fairy tales if you do this.
We've used a lot of facts in there,
Right.
and it is a distraction in the sense that whilst we were getting all this information together and waiting for the culmination of finding the man, actually finding him, I had all this information. I thought, what a nice, enjoyable little adventure story it would make. But we've used a lot of the facts that he's come up with.
Got to tell you that the musket ball, after about 3 weeks in vinegar, now looks like the business. I've got to tell you
we'll
that.
have it back now then.
No, you do your own work. But not only did you find musket balls, when you were, it was a soldiers' camp, I seem to remember.
Yes,
right?
he found a soldiers' camp that is not registered anywhere on any records or in any.
Now, what I want to know is, because that's where we left it last time. Here you are, Gordon, here's a musket ball to prove that we're there. And yeah, fine, lovely, you know, it's a Marley to me, you know.
Yes, fine.
Coin to the period, spurs, love tokens, you've got all this
that's right.
on a place that historically, factually, doesn't exist.
That's right.
Now does it exist in the history books? Are
We have
people taking it that
we
seriously?
told the authorities, and it was seen on television. A live television crew were there filming it while we were digging them up.
Yeah. I mean, that was amazing, wasn't it? Can we go through that story for those who don't know? Let's never presume anything on this program. The listeners joining us all the time. You actually decided one day, Carl, come in on this. You decided you would now go a-travelling.
We decided, at Peter's instigation, that we were going to go to Scotland. He told us that he could actually take us to this location, this Civil War campsite. So we go 300 miles nearly into Scotland. We get to Kelso, which we knew there were Civil War troops, English Civil War troops, garrisoned at Kelso, and the main base was actually in Kelso. But Peter said he knew where the original camp was, so he took us 1.5 miles out of Kelso onto a place called Woodden, which is a farm estate. He stopped the car halfway up a lane where there's a row of oak trees, and he said, we need to get out of the car here because the campsite's just over this hedge. Well, all we could see was open fields. He gets out the car, steps over a hedge and goes about 20 yards, and there's a ravine. In that ravine, he started to get vibes. It was like being switched on again. He knew he was back where he was 300 years ago.
Quivering. So
that's all that bit
very emotional.
Yeah.
Now that's the site that when the film crew came up and they got the local metal detecting club in, on their instigation, not ours, they started to metal detect in that site, and that's where all this information was coming up.
And these are just three guys from the Midlands who've driven up using their own petrol.
That's right.
Said to a camera crew, this might make a good
Carlton
story.
Television wanted to do a documentary.
Yeah,
basically.
but there's a lot of trust here.
Yes, because you've got a site that's about 25-30 acres. Now we could have planted stuff
for the crew
to find, but they chose where they were going to film. They went to the most awkwardest, remote part of the
Sorry,
site.
you lost me there. They chose to go. Wouldn't you be telling them where to go? Because
we just gave them the
could have
location.
buried musket balls for them to find, couldn't we?
Yeah.
They wanted to see us dig them up where they wanted to see if there was any.
Right.
We could have planted them the night before.
Yeah.
To look good on camera.
Yeah.
So we said to the film crew, where do you want to show and they said, we'll set up over here.
Can I be cynical? How do we know the camera crew didn't plan?
well, once they arrived...
It's really cynical, that is, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you get a feeling I know a lot of journalists?
Yes. Just a matter of... No, none of that went on.
But you can see how people will be thinking, what we're asking you.
They've thought that ever since they've known we're brothers. They think we've made it all up. Because we're brothers and we want to make money. We haven't made money. It's cost us to produce that book.
Blood on the
Which we tried to sell. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners would like
Well, I can see by the way it's produced, you haven't spent a fortune on it.
No, this is...
I don't mean to be cruel here, but this is a very basic book here, isn't it? Now,
but the artefacts that were coming out of this particular location were not from Scottish troops. They're not from a Scottish period of history. Everything that came out the ravine, there was nothing from an earlier period of before 1640 and nothing after 1654 from a military point of view, and everything was English. And that's been verified by archaeologists up there. It was all English, and it shouldn't be there.
Because those of you who watch Braveheart will know why it shouldn't have been there. We did a lot of that in those... Well, we have some recent history, haven't we?
And Peter actually spoke 4 months before we actually went to Scotland on the first location, on the first session of research, if you like, that Peter said that he saw a hoard or a stash of coins and gold and silver being buried. And he saw it being buried at Woodden. Now, we have documented evidence that in 1991, a hoard of English Civil War coins, gold, silver and bronze, were found at Woodden.
So the hoard has been found?
Yes.
Now also in Floor's Castle.
Yeah.
Which the chances are it would have been, and been too much of a coincidence for it to be there on the day of your filming and all that.
We weren't part of that. That was found before we actually got there.
Peter, help me with this contact with a woman who claimed to be the daughter of John, because I find that quite interesting as well.
Well, what happened, the first time we were on television was a chat show in Nottingham with John Stapleton, the host. Immediately after we came off the air, we went into the hospitality suite, and the producer said to me, Peter, there's a phone call for you, from your daughter. Now, I thought that he meant my daughter who lives in Nottingham, but the woman on the other end of the line was a woman named Barbara Hartfield. She said, I've just seen you on television, and you are my father from my past life.
So John's daughter?
Yes, from this period.
Right. And our first reaction would be, we've got a great nutter on the line.
Exactly. I had to give the phone to her, but I just couldn't handle that.
And I spoke to her minutes after the show had just finished, and I said, well, look, Barbara, over the phone here at this moment, we're in the hospitality suite, we'll have to contact you later, but you'll have to give me more information than you've just seen on television.
Because she could just be putting that into her own made-up jigsaw.
Later on, with all truth, we did meet her, and she did give us other bits and pieces.
Like what? Give me a couple.
She knew the present that Peter had purchased or made for his daughter in that century. He'd carved her a wooden horse and decorated it with coloured ribbon. She knew that before Peter had mentioned it.
But had you mentioned it elsewhere, like on this programme in the past?
We have it on a hypnosis tape that nobody's heard. Only family members. She'd never heard it.
So all of a sudden, ears are pricking, we're something, hello, antennae are buzzing. Yeah.
And let's face it, Gordon, if we are now to believe that Peter has come back, or he is a reincarnation soul-wise of another person, who are we to say, this lady can't be? If he did have a daughter...
But she could just be playing a game.
Oh, we
with
know
you.
that. So could Peter.
Oh, yeah.
So could Peter.
But she gets named.
But you know he's not, because...
I know he's not.
Yeah,
But
Carl knows he's not.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah, but
Well, I was the biggest sceptic going
You're
when we
bound
first
to
started
think
doing it, but Peter keeps proving himself right. And
What's
that's
the
fantastic.
latest thing, by the way, that's come out? You know, at 4 o'clock one morning in a waking dream. What have you come up with recently?
We've got one of his captains. He mentioned a captain that came up to Nottingham. He brought up from the coast to take charge of the regiment.
He named him.
He named him, and he named him as Captain John Leverett. And we said, well, what is significant about John Leverett? And he said, well, I see him, strangely, he said, I see him on a ship, and alongside him is Christopher Columbus. Well, as far as I'm aware in history, Christopher Columbus discovered America.
It wasn't the same period.
It wasn't the same period of history,
No.
but he's got this vision of Leverett on a ship with Columbus.
Or something to do with the Americas.
And we said, well, is there anything else? He said, yes, well, Leverett had a strange accent. When he came back and he ended up in Nottingham to take charge, he did have a strange foreign type tang, if you like, to his voice. Rather tall guy. And we basically left it at that. But we did some research that took us quite some time to do. And I found an archive record in Norwich University. Captain John Leverett was recalled to Nottingham to take charge of the 1st Regiment of Foot.
We went to Nottingham.
And he was brought back from Massachusetts, where he was assistant governor.
So he was American.
I still
as
don't
Peter
know
said.
why.
What's the I missed the Columbus thing, though, on the same ship.
No, he was talking about the Americas. He was getting
Americas.
talking about Americas.
Yes, Americas.
But all this sort of stuff, when is this thing's getting bigger now, isn't it?
Oh, it's systematic.
It's getting wider,
We're on
isn't
the
it?
second book now. Better one than that one. The true story.
That was only a joke when I said
But,
that.
but it's the information. It's not just a thing where we're trying to find out information. It's become an obsession.
But you've got to be careful with obsessions,
Yes.
because they tend to lead you.
That's
and
right.
you've got to lead this, haven't you?
That's got to be...
I mean, I think that's important,
logical,
isn't it?
yeah. We can get drawn into things.
What we're looking for now, we're going to the Army records for that period at Kew in London, and we're trying to find a record of either Leverett, well, we know Leverett existed because we've had that proof, but we're trying to find a record of John Raphael or some of the other people he mentions that he was with in that period on Army pay records. That to us would be the clincher.
And the book is out now, Blood on the Crown.
It is available from me.
But it's available for you. Will you leave your number with the team? Okay.
Yes.
I think what's important is that this is separate from the research that
That's
you're
right.
carrying on.
But it does contain...
It's inspired by.
She's been talking
Inspired by. Well, I'm always inspired by you. I tell you what, it's always good to talk to you. We've talked about 3 or 4 times in the past now, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right then. And I just want, you know, when you get that hoard of gold, just remember who your friends are.
What's the time team next year?
Oh, keep on giving, let's go live.